So how should Prime Minister Mark Carney navigate this latest pipeline battle? Well, let's bring in our front bench. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's a senior advisor at North Star Public Affairs. Melanie Paradis is a former communications director to Aaron O'Toole. She's now the president of Texture Communications. And former interim NDP national director Carl Boulanger is here. He's now the president of Traction Strategies. Welcome to Friday, everyone. Sabrina, as a Liberal in Alberta, this is quite the conundrum. How do you think that Carney should handle all this?
I think there's a couple of different interesting things at play. So let me start first with Danielle Smith. I think that Danielle Smith's negotiation style, when it has come to this pipeline in particular, has not been very welcoming to the rest of Canada. She has set it up as though this, whether or not we build this pipeline is a test of whether or not this country can succeed and is really a country to begin with. I think that that's a setup that's doomed to fail because I don't think that other Canadians perceive it that way. I think it sets us up as us versus them, you know, Alberta versus Canada, and I don't think that anyone is interested in that. And I think it feeds into this fodder that Alberta, you know, is only really in it for itself. What she could be doing instead is framing this from a nation-building perspective, tied to pathways, which I think, you know, helps Canadians see where Alberta is going on the emissions reduction, and actually bringing something positive to the country. I think that is where Danielle Smith often fails, and I think that that continues to be her style. On the other hand, I think Mark Carney, I'm not entirely sure what the win is for Mark Carney on this. If he negotiates an MOU and doesn't actually go through with it, I think that sets him up to not necessarily fail in Alberta, but continue to make Alberta, you know, equally successful at pointing fingers at Ottawa and saying that Ottawa is the problem maker here. But if he, and in addition to which, if he sets it up and wins on a pipeline, he risks losing those seats in BC that we are very tenuously holding on to as Liberals. And so I think that there needs to be a little bit more thought given from the federal Liberals as to what is the actual win here, but also what are the objectives that we want to achieve.
Melanie, can we really call it the wrong play by Smith if she may have an MOU in her hand right now? I mean, isn't that the win?
It absolutely is a win, but I think more importantly, a pipeline project for Alberta is bigger than Alberta and bigger than a pipeline. It's also symbolic, I think, to the rest of the country, because for 10 years, we've been gripped by a culture of no, where it seems like absolutely nothing could get built in this country. There'll be NIMBYs stopping housing projects. There's people who are trying to stop pipelines. People are opposed to everything, it seems. And Canada really has an important moment right now where we have a tremendous amount of momentum. Canadians, the polling has showed that Canadians want to see major projects built from coast to coast. That includes pipelines. We're seeing opinions shift on pipelines in such a positive direction. This is a moment that really needs to be seized so that we can get major projects like this built. I think that Danielle Smith is absolutely right to be pushing her agenda forward. And I think that Mark Carney is taking a smart approach here. And what I hope that he's doing is that he's going to confront that culture of no and shift Canada towards a culture of yes. Yes, and these projects can be the safest and the best and the cleanest in the world.
And so that culture of no, or at least the one no that we have, Carl, is on the West Coast. It's the NDP Premier David Eby. How's he supposed to feel in all this when you consider that he's learning Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, was apparently at the table and he wasn't?
Yeah, do you see that monkey on my back? No, you don't, because Mark Carney took it and put it on David Eby's back. He's the guy saying no now. It's not the Fed's fault, and you can see Danielle Smith and David Eby going at it at each other. It's not the federal government. We were willing to play. So that was a clever move that Mark Carney did. Now, of course, it comes with a price, and British Columbia will react strongly. And you heard Premier Eby, and he was on the show here last night. But you also have First Nations in British Columbia that are not happy about this move. So how do you navigate this? Well, for now, it's a fight between BC and Alberta. And I think it's interesting that Premier Eby says, I want to be at the table. If he wants to be at the table, it means he's open to something. What is that? We don't know. But he's open to talk, at least. And that's progress. And for Danielle Smith, I would take that and invite him to the table.
Yeah, and have that conversation, Sabrina, because if, to Carl's point, if he wants to talk and it's not a non-starter, then maybe there's an opening?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Mel's point that we want to create a culture of yes. And I think that the Major Projects Office and the 10 major projects that are already on the list are creating a culture of yes. I think the idea that the only pipeline project that matters to this country is this supposed no proponent oil pipeline to the West Coast is the problem here that Alberta continues to put forward. I do also think that if Premier Smith is serious about this, that she should have a working group that's either active in BC, but also active with coastal First Nations. Alberta has generally built a very good relationship with its First Nations, and I think that they could take that to the coast if they wanted to, but none of that's happening, right? And that's where I think that sometimes Premier Smith's intent on actually producing a project versus intent of producing a political communications game where we can point to Ottawa is at question. There's still no proponent. There's still I think 30% X room on TMX that could grow our oil exports to Asia. So again, what is the project that we're talking about? And I think that's where the Premier often fails.
Mel, I got about a minute. I'm trying to split it between you and Carl. So do you think that she is playing this game still, or do you think that this is actually moving along the way that it can move along? Because she said, Alberta's the proponent right now, and she's looking to create the conditions for private investment.
Absolutely. The past decade has been lost to development because of the Trudeau government. And now we are seeing industries the reason why there's no proponent is because the conditions for the past decade have been terrible for developing a project like this. So Alberta is taking a leading role, creating what I assume is going to be a corridor where a proponent could then come in and say, okay, you've got the corridor lined up, you got everything, you got the deal with the federal government, we're good to go. This looks like a solid investment to me.
Carl, wrap us up in 30.
Well, I mean, the key for the federal government, of course, is to make sure that British Columbia doesn't get in a position where they get their backs up and they refuse to talk. And so Premier Eby has opened that door. You have to seize that door. Don't let this drag, because if it drags on and deals are being made and memorandum are being signed, you're going to end up in the courts for a very long time.
Yeah. And either in the courts or you just won't be at that table anymore.
That's right.
And there's decisions being made without you. All right, Carl Belanger, Melanie Paradis, and Sabrina Grover, thank you all for being here.